years. Did you went to Sunday Middle School?
No.
No?
No.
So you probably have met my comadre, she used to be the probation officer at
I had her, she was, when I was in instruction for 8 years, she was a student.
ella que
And maybe it's a little one.
ajá, sí.
Yeah, I was together.
Okay.
Entonces,
So you,
anyway, welcome.
thank you.
Andrea Moreno, she's your new deputy.
Okay, so you're the one with the email, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We get it up here?
Oh, yeah, we met before.
Yes.
I'm gonna break my diet, so.
So I think that I'm not being in and out of the hospital. But bottom line is I use a whole lot of time.
It's my first time live
Can't
streaming.
do anything except for the mayor agenda. The father-in-law passed away.
One of my coworkers, your mom passed away from him.
So today I was interpreter.
Are you streaming right now?
You're everything.
Getting fun support.
It's set up, but I have it paused.
So, wow.
Paused it.
If it wouldn't have been a holiday weekend, I would have probably had Monday and more benefit. Didn't quite work that way.
Camino otra vez.
Ahorita no. Ahorita no. Yeah, looks like it's good. Is it this one? There you go. Oh yeah, the fonts. That'll work.
I was telling Judge that,
Yeah.
they're gonna have the dinner for
Fonts
the
a
weekend
little.
on Friday, right?
Mind if I just scroll through it? Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty crowded, eh?
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
No, actually, I always sit here, but someone beat me to it today.
That's mine.
Oh, okay.
I'm moving right now.
I'm fine.
I'm not sitting up here. That's fine. She's on her own.
I try to be as far,
Testing 1, 2,
as far
3.
away as from the recording, because then like, if I am interpreting, I never know when someone's gonna show up. Then the previous deputy clerk told me once that she could hear me in the background, so she was having a hard time listening to the recording to do the minutes because she could hear me.
Carmen, how are you?
Good.
Font issues.
Yes.
So is that on this? I can take the jump drive out, or are you running it right off the jump drive?
I don't think I'm running it. Where am I running it from? Let's see.
That you have
Yeah, I
it
think I ran it from the. I'm not sure if it was letting me run it from here. Let
Yeah,
me
it
try it
looks like
again.
you are running it from there. All right.
Did it close it? I think it did.
Oh, there it is.
Awesome.
I think we're good.
Sweet.
Thank you much.
No problem.
Muchos problemas con esa. Sí, como yo me estaba enferma de los bronquios y me tomé 3 días más. Y luego me tomé los 2 días con él y vamos a ver, usé más horas de lo que trabajé. Y tengo como 40 nomás. But le digo, I'm going to ask Carmen. Let me see because some other but we thought most of them are si no sé por qué pues no puedo ni nada hasta que la usara pero cuando no está él ahí me interfiere
Testing.
y luego real y mi mamá estaba en el hospital solo de no, y fue porque no tengo muchas horas.
Y me lo comí un chile. Enchilado.
Yeah, man. Good to see you.
Sally.
Yes.
Were those super gas?
De Rico? Cochinilla. Did you like them?
They're no. That's good to know. Yeah. It's right there. Yes. Burritos. Oh, yeah. They're right there. Good boy. But it's gonna be cold. Yes.
Oh.
Carmen's gonna sit here or here.
They always say you never turn down someone. I did just brush my teeth. Y ya me cambió. Jesus. Just I'm gonna. This always bugs me when you can see this. You can click this little thing, and it just goes away. So just ease of mind. But it's only.
Call this meeting to order. Special work session for City of Somerton City Council, February 18, 2020, 6:03 p.m. We're gonna forego all formalities and just do roll call and then go to item on the agenda.
Mayor Gerardo Anaya,
Present.
Vice Mayor Marta Garcia, Councilman Miguel Villalpando, Councilman Carlos Gonzalez,
Present.
Councilman Luis Galindo, Councilman Jesus Roldan,
Present.
Councilman Juan Castillo.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Item number 1.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. We have been working on this project for several months now, and tonight I would like to introduce Michael Baker International. This is the consulting firm that the city has hired to assist us with this project. With us tonight is Matt Kleisico, and I can't, and Adam, I'm sorry. So they will give us an update on how we are on the on this process, just keeping in mind that we have deadlines to meet, and our main goal is to be on the ballot in November of 2020 with this project for approval.
All right, thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to kind of get you up to speed on the work that we've been doing on this general plan. As Carmen mentioned, our focus for tonight is really to just be an informational work session to get this PowerPoint up there. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So as Carmen mentioned, tonight is really focused on walking you through the process so that you have a little familiarity with some of the steps that we've already undertaken on this effort, and then discuss the 60-day review draft, which I'll kind of present in a little more detail in the next few slides. So as a recap for anyone joining us, as well as the council, the general plan is a state mandated plan. It has to be updated every 10 years. It is the foundational document that guides the future development and growth of the community. So it really is what often is referred to as the blueprint of the community. And what you can see on the right-hand side there of the screen, based on state mandate, we must address certain elements within this general plan based on the size or population of the community. So the elements that are identified with the stars there are required per state statute. The ones that do not have a star are elective, ones that Somerton chose to include within their previous general plan that we were very honored and proud to work on back in 2010. And so we carried forward those same elements. And then very important to this update effort is that we're also introducing an economic development element because that is a very key component of the financial and future growth of the community as consideration of economic development. So those are the elements that we touched as part of this update effort. Once we understood what are the elements or chapters of the plan that we were going to address, there's really 4 phases that we went through as part of this update effort. First was recognize, where we do an existing conditions assessment and understand what is the status of the community today, where have we been, and as well, where are we projected to go. So we look at a lot of different things when we do that analysis. We look at census data. We look at data that's available from recent publications or reports, whether it be from the county, from the city itself, or the state overall. So we use all of those for factual data, background information. But we also have an engagement component to this general plan. this general plan, as Carmen mentioned, has to go to the voters for ratification or approval. So naturally, public involvement is very important to this process. So you can see that engagement starts at that recognized phase, but it's a component in every step of the process. So once we get through our existing conditions analysis, we understand kind of the status of the community. We have analyzed some of the projections that are available to us to see into the future of where Somerton might be 10, 20 years down the line. We're there in a position to move into the enrich phase, where we actually draft the update of the plan. And that's the phase we're currently in the tail end of that. So we, with our background information, went in and updated the plan, revised information based on the data we received as well as public feedback, and then updated some of the goals and policies in the plan that I'll share with you tonight. But at the culmination of that process, we end up with what we refer to as the 60-day review draft. This draft is available on the city's website right now. If you haven't had a chance to take a peek at it, I would encourage you to take a look. But the 60-day review draft is, again, a state-required point in the process. It's essentially a time that we put the plan down, and as I like to say, let it marinate. We put our pens down, we distribute it to adjacent communities, local agencies, the military base, the state as well. All of those agencies and the public have an opportunity over this 2-month time frame to provide input to us. And that's why we're in front of you today, is part of that 60-day review process is to check in with you and see if you have any comments about where we're headed, goals that we're focusing on, to make sure that if there's something that we want to incorporate or that we may have missed or want to make a little more robust, that we have the opportunity to do it now. Because the next time we're going to be in front of you is we'll be taking this to the Planning Commission for recommendation, and then to you for final approval, and ultimately to get on that ballot in November. There are some strict timelines associated with that. We have to have council approval 150 days before that November election. So we have to have this plan approved by council 150 days prior to that November date. Hence why we want to make sure that if there's an opportunity we can address any concerns that you may have, we'd like to do them now as opposed to when we're looking to get this plan formally adopted. So, before I jump into some of the content, is there any questions about the process? Pretty straightforward, I would agree. So, as I mentioned, one of the first things we do when we look at updating a general plan is do our community assessment. So, when we went through our analysis, we reached out through community workshops and online engagement. But we first looked at data from a technical standpoint. So we looked at census information, we looked at county records, we analyzed state state projections, and we learned a lot. We recognized that just as the general plan identified back in 2010 about being one of the best, get this maybe back up, but yeah, that's all right. There we go. Just as we identified back in 2010 about identifying Somerton as one of the best cities in Yuma County. Okay. We saw that the city has started to embrace that best little city in Arizona. And we thought that was a really telling element of the community and about what its priorities are and how it views itself and how we want to make sure that we protect that view and that perception of the community. your screens up? Great. Okay, looks like we're all synced up. So one of the first things we wanted to make sure we recognize is that notion of the best little city in Arizona. We also recognize that Somerton has national exposure in being identified as third safest city in Arizona. As I mentioned, we look at census population information to understand where we are. The 2018 estimates from the census put Somerton's population at 16,491. When we look at the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity, their population projections, so they provide projections for communities across Arizona, they looked out all the way to 2040 and showed the projected population to be approximately 26,376 people. So that gives us, certainly again, these are projections, but it gives us some gauge as to where we need to be considering in terms of growth and what may occur in Somerton. So with that projected growth, we can start looking at other projected needs. So housing, for example, based on that population and an average people per household, we can expect almost just over 3,000 units between now and 2040 that would need to be developed in Somerton to support that population increase. That's an average annual increase of 141 units or housing units per year. With that type of growth, we naturally need to see infrastructure to support that type of growth. So we understand that there are some water and wastewater needs or expansion that needs to occur in certain areas of the community to manage that demand. And then along with that, there's also a companion element of economic development or employment. And when we looked at some of the recent planning efforts through the infrastructure planning that the community has gone through, that report identified when it was prepared back in 2017 through to 2032 that they're projecting 914 jobs being added to the Somerton community. And again, with all of that growth, there was recent efforts to update the city's park and recreation master plan. That plan identified some level of service shortage in particular amenities, and we heard from the public that multi-use fields and softball fields are certainly at a premium here in the city and are highly used. And so that master plan identified some improvements in terms of adding those types of facilities over the coming years. So those are some of the, yes. Yes.
For the projected employment growth, the 914,000, you based that data on what kind of data?
So this was prepared by Tischler and Tischler-Bice, thank you, in your 2017 infrastructure master planning documents. I'm not sure what specific data they based that off of. Any other questions regarding some of that projection information? So we naturally, that's not the only area that we look at. We need to complement that data with actual feedback from the community and understand what's important to Somerton residents. So we used a lot of different actions and events to solicit information.
Yeah.
Yes.
The current level of service shortage for models, multi-use fields, softball fields, et cetera, was that taken from the recent Parks and Rec master plan?
Yes, that was just pulled from their analysis of the existing facilities today and where there were certain level of service shortages, but does not capture the planned number of facilities that need to be added to address the current shortage as well as projected growth.
And for what it's worth, if I may interject, we weren't short by much. It was, it was
Yes,
pretty close.
yes, that's very good clarification, that across the board, there was only a few, even half of facilities in some instances.
Yeah.
So in terms of our different avenues to solicit feedback, this is always a challenge with doing these community plans to get public feedback. Everybody is busy. There's a lot of other efforts within any community in terms of events and other efforts going on. So we try to use a lot of different tools to obtain feedback, whether that's in person or online. So we kicked off the project with a staff summit and met with department heads of all the departments in the city. That really gave us a foundation to kind of work from, to understand from a technical standpoint where the city stands. We also conducted a city tour with many of those staff members so that we not discuss some of the challenges or opportunities that the city has, but also toured and viewed those in person. We held stakeholder interviews. Some of you participated in those. Those stakeholder interviews are intended to have one-on-one conversations with key members of the community, relative from to businesses, to elected officials, to nonprofit representatives, just to have an opportunity to have a more casual conversation about what their needs are, what their views are about the future. Again, to get a more well-rounded view of what we need to be focusing on within the general plan. We conducted a general plan advisory committee meeting. So that committee is made up of additional members of Somerton or agencies around the Yuma County area that came together to give their feedback and input on the growth needs and opportunities and challenges of Somerton, and to also share the things that they're working on. So if there's opportunities where we can align ourselves with efforts of other agencies, we certainly wanted to make sure we did that. We had a traditional community workshop where we invited residents to join us and share their input. And then we developed a website on the city's current web site, or a web page on the city's current website. We also included an online survey and a online mapping program, Social Pinpoint, that allowed, surveys are very helpful because we can gain a lot of information, but we don't get the geographic element to those surveys. So the Social Pinpoint allowed residents to grab pins and actually identify on a map certain improvements or areas that they would like to focus on. So the next few slides, I just wanted to share a high-level, broad brush of some of the feedback we received out of that effort. I apologize that some of this might be small on the screen, but I did provide some printouts to you in case those are a little more user-friendly. So one of the first things we want to look at when we're updating the general plan is our vision statement. What is it that we're working towards? What is it that this community is going to focus on over the next 20 years? So we took the key principles or elements out of the town's current vision statement and asked residents to prioritize or rank what's most important out of those values. So you'll see on the results on the left that a safe community, a great sense of community, and economic development and job growth, along with education values and cultural diversity and our agricultural heritage, we're all kind of key or the most prevalent in terms of priority of the values within the vision statement. But I would note that all of those did receive some level of importance. So that tells us that the values that Somerton held 10 years ago still hold true today. And so that gives us confidence that we don't need to make too substantial adjustments to the vision of where Somerton is going, and that what we have been working with the last 10 years is something that we can continue with subtle adjustments to work towards in the future. As part of that, we also want to see if there's any opportunities for additions. So we ask residents to identify any key words or phrases that come to mind when they think about Somerton. So this is just a word cloud. It identifies the various words that were shared that describe Somerton, and the larger words means that the word was mentioned more than others. So you see safe was mentioned most prevalently, small town, opportunity, beautiful, businesses, community, all words that are either in our existing values statement or ones that we recognize through our existing conditions assessment. So then we look at some of the items through our online survey. So we posed the question, what would you like to see improved in Somerton? So we want to start looking at, okay, we understand where we are today, what might we want to be working on in the future. Some of the top 3 or 4 responses were overall dining, shopping, and entertainment options. The safety of our community, so again, we recognize it's a safe community, but want to be vigilant about that. The downtown area kind of goes hand in hand with that overall dining, shopping, and entertainment. And then employment opportunities. So I think that shows that the residents understand the importance of job growth in the community, but also value their quality of life and want to look at ways that we might enhance the safety as well as some of the entertainment options that Somerton provides. We also needed to make sure we addressed transportation. So we asked, which of the following describes Somerton's most important transportation issues that need to be addressed? Again, some of the top 3 responses: pass-through traffic, naturally given the location and traffic that runs through downtown. Condition of roads. 10 years ago, Somerton made a very big effort to improve the roadways, and the residents appreciated that, and I think still look for that to be a priority in the future. And then parking availability, specifically in the downtown area. And that anecdotally often was connected to certain types of uses, or as you can imagine, times of day. We also asked, what is most needed in Somerton to improve the health of you and your family? We can see that almost 23% identified wanting healthier food options, so access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Again, improved job opportunities. The idea being more job opportunities allows families to be more stable and to provide health care for family members. And then, of course, recreational facilities, those opportunities for residents to get out and exercise. And then, which of these trends would you like to see Somerton support in the future? So we wanted to ask this question because we wanted to inquire with residents. When we look broadly, when we start to kind of push the boundaries a little bit of some of the trends we're seeing in our lives today or across the country, what might be something that we need to introduce or pay more attention to here in Somerton? So we posed some questions about being a smart city and including more e-governance and automation services and monitoring. So that gained the most responses in terms of
Excuse me.
almost 28%.
Were these
Yes.
surveys fill in the blank, or did they have to select certain categories?
So, good question. These were these were provided for them to choose from, and then they had an optional other if they wanted to include additional information.
I'm surprised at the health. You hear a lot of the pesticides around the city and crop dusting and everything, but it wasn't here, so I'm sure that would probably be one with health concerns.
Great. So, excellent feedback, Mayor. Yes, that was not identified as an other that in some of the information, but certainly if given an opportunity as a choice, it sounds like that would have been.
And that's probably one of the most prevalent, complaints that we get. We can do something, and we really can't, but we hear it.
Right. Great. We'll take note of that and make sure that we recognize that. So as far as just some of those other trends, telecommunication and mobile networks, staying on top of some of the technology there. So as the world becomes more e-based, that we are prepared for that. And then to not get away from that notion of sustainability and green energy. Somerton has incorporated that into a lot of the town's efforts, and so it looks like that trend is something that the community appreciates. So as I mentioned, all of that feedback from the community, from our research, all goes into updating the plan itself. And so the first item we look at is touching up the vision or the values and principles of the community. So a lot of things hold true today. So we still want to be that, provide that great sense of community, maintain that cultural diversity and heritage, be a safe community, offer excellent schools, maintain our agricultural roots, create jobs, promote entrepreneurship. Do it in a quality way, though. Don't just grow for the sake of growing. A specific focus on the new high school. That is often sometimes just a element of other communities, but for Somerton, the new high school is a priority. And then recreational opportunities, to maintain those and focus on revitalizing the downtown. So again, those are the broad values that guide the general plan itself. So if you think there's key statements or initiatives that you're working on that we need to incorporate into these, it would be great to hear them tonight or over the coming weeks. And this would be our opportunity to, one, make sure that it's a part of our vision, but incorporate any goals or policies that go along with that.
One thing that's interesting is under the values ranking, we have revitalized downtown as a number 2, and then what would you like to see improved is the downtown, and then here we are highlighting the downtown revitalization. Interesting how different surveys. What would you, on the values ranking, how would you rank this survey, or what demographic was used for this values ranking? Was it on the community meetings and the other one was the online?
So these vision, what we did is we looked at the 2010 value statements and compared that to the data that we received, whether it be from the public or the technical data that we analyzed, and looked to see if there was any gaps of did those 2010 values miss anything, and then are there any ways or areas that we need to update. So really what we went in and we saw a lot of commonality between what we had in 2010 to what is proposed in front of you today. It was really strengthening some of the commitment to these. When we go through the value statements and asking residents to prioritize those are just there to help us understand what are some of the areas that we want to make sure we focus on. But when we come to actually creating the vision statement, we're not necessarily intending for any of these to take precedence or priority over any other. They're all intended to have equal weight within the community based on different issues that you may be addressing. But the key here is, as we look forward in the general plan, because it's the blueprint of the community, it often is referenced when we're going after grants or we're seeking to attract certain types of employers into the community. So we want to make sure that this general plan, that we can point to something in this plan in order to provide justification or proof that it is a priority in our community when we're going after a state or a national grant or funding. Or that when this employer comes, we can say, look, our general plan shows that specific element is a priority in our community and we're committed to it. So I think the desire from a work session standpoint is, if you see any of those priorities as the council has been addressing certain issues or topics, share those with us, even if it's just kind of an observation. It's not a crafted, complete vision, and we'll address those and implement them into this current draft. So from that vision statement, our compass is set. Right, we have a direction that we want to be working towards over the next 10 or 20 years. So then it's a matter of going into each element or chapter of the plan and look at updating the goals of, okay, how are we going to achieve that vision statement? So certainly with our time tonight, to be respectful, I'm not going to read word for word every goal. But I highlighted some of the elements within each chapter to convey some of the commonalities, I'll say, of reaching back into that vision statement to make sure that we're touching on all the things that the community expressed was important. So when we look at land use, it's encouraging new development and redevelopment. It's maintaining a strong local agricultural economy, strengthening our downtown, balancing residential development with employment growth, and still being mindful of the Marine Corps Air Station. When we look at growth areas, that is the city proper itself, we want to coordinate planning with public agencies and neighboring jurisdictions to make sure that we can utilize any synergy with some of the efforts that they may be doing. Efficient plan development. Do that growth in a thoughtful way. When we look at transportation and circulation, make sure that we don't lose sight of improving the safety, reliability, and comfort of our transportation facilities. Make them multimodal. Somerton does one of the best jobs of any community that we work in across the state in terms of offering multimodal opportunities, especially with the off-street trail system. And so that was a key component to make sure we have a goal that accommodates that. And then support the economic vitality. So have a transportation system that supports economic growth. It's not just about moving people around and through the community. It's about moving goods around and into the community as well as out. The neighborhoods within the community. It's not enough to just think about Somerton as the city overall. It's made up of individual neighborhoods. And so we want to sustain those neighborhoods. And when we say sustainable, we don't necessarily mean it in an environmental standpoint, but we mean it in a social, an economic, an aesthetic, all of those ways to make sure our neighborhoods can be vibrant over the over the time frame, I should say, of Somerton's growth. Quality housing at all income levels and lifestyle preferences. This is one element that was interesting to hear as we went through community outreach about some of the younger residents within Somerton that go away to school, get their degrees, but there's not maybe a lot of options beyond single-family homes that they can move back even if they want to. And so thinking about when we're looking at residential growth in Somerton, are we considering those different types of housing units, not just single-family detached homes? But then also protecting our historic character. About parks and open space, we want to continue to support recreation and the community service programs. There's some great recreational programs within the city. So as those grow, as the population grows, we want to make sure we don't lose sight of growing along with those in terms of our amenities. Preserve existing agricultural land uses. And continue to provide quality parks. So it's not just about providing facilities. It's providing those facilities in areas where they're needed and that they're done in a high-quality way. And then the environmental planning aspect of it, protect noise and air quality. That's certainly a regional thing. So we're coordinating our policies under this goal with the county overall. Managing natural resources, supporting sustainable development practices. So that's recycling and other efforts such as that. Water resources, make sure we're providing a sustainable water system, and that goes along with our wastewater collection and treatment. Public facilities and cost of development. Balance impacts of development that apply to regional agencies. This is something that we want to pay close attention to, that if there are certain impacts or improvements in the community, that we're also looking at, are those efforts that are addressed by agencies, and make sure that Somerton's not taking a disproportionate brunt of the impacts of some of those necessary improvements. Reliable public facilities and services, create a safe and welcoming environment. So that goes along with how the work that Somerton has done to be a safe community. New development pays its fair share. So make sure as development comes online that they put in the improvements that they place, or the demand that they place on the community. And then our last chapter, the economic development element that we added. We certainly want to retain and expand the existing businesses in Somerton, but we want to look at ways to strengthen our downtown, which means attracting new businesses as well. So it's that kind of three-pronged approach in terms of economic development. Protect what we have and grow new industry. So I'll pause there. Those are, again, the general goals that we're utilizing. Under each of these goals is a whole series of policies or tools, actions that will be used by you when you're making decisions that roll up to these goals. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the general plan itself, you might take a look at some of those policies. A lot of them are ones that exist in the current general plan, but we also introduced other ones to, again, make it a more modern, updated general plan. And then last, I would note that we also have an implementation plan as part of this effort that identifies incremental efforts that not only Somerton or staff, but other agencies and associations within Somerton can undertake to help achieve these goals. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to see if there's any thoughts or questions that the council may have.
Any questions, comments? Councilman Gonzalez.
Based on all these findings, and looking at the map and our boundaries, where do you see Somerton grow within the next 10 years? Because I know we had the high noise from the military.
Right.
You know, based on all these findings, the data and everything else, where do you see Somerton grow? Towards east, north, or south?
So there's some balancing there that goes with that. There's attractive parcels to the north, but there's infrastructure limitations with those. So if those property owners were to move forward, present probably a higher probability of development without more substantial infrastructure improvements. But certainly, if we're talking about residential growth, naturally, over the long term, to support the projected development that the state has identified, we're going to need to start looking to the west. And then employment growth, naturally, we show within the land use plan as being predominantly within the noise contours because of its compatibility with those.
Questions, comments? Just one comment on those, where it says there's shortage on the level of service for Parks and Rec. My concern is, you know, when we had that master plan and like the city manager said, it mentioned that Somerton had adequate, but a lot of it also had to do with, you know, with the high school, and we're still trying to decide is, even like the amphitheater was, you know, a former council member's baby right there. It was added there, but is there really a need? Is this going to be is this going to be included in the general plan as far as itemizing stuff that need? And my concern is just managing the public's expectations that, you know, they're going to, you know, for example, there was discussion of soccer fields too,
Right.
And that's probably more of a need than the softball field.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, you know, if it's going to be included in the general plan, let's try to be realistic instead of, you know, just what it's really needed in the community, or if the majority of the public wants it, then let's include it. But if it was the general plan, it has, you know, there's other factors that were involved with that.
Right.
Parks and Recreation master plan.
Great clarification, Mayor. Given our time, that was probably almost a very broad summation in terms of that level of service, kind of just bullet point. The general plan goes into detail about the findings of the Parks and Rec master plan to clarify that there were more extensive recommendations based on that preliminary analysis. But what's most important is, I would say, kudos to the council as well as staff for updating Parks and Rec master plan, because what that allowed us to do is reference policies and tools that are specified in that plan into the general plan so that they align with each other. So really the general plan directs people to the Parks and Rec master plan for specific detail, which is how it should be done and what is most appropriate. Is we don't want this, it's a general plan, it's intended to be general, so many communities, we work in one right now, their general plan's 500 pages, and no one can really get through 500 pages. And so the intent with this general plan is to just identify what the issues are and the opportunities, policy or initiatives to more appropriate documents. And so that's what this general plan does, is direct them to the Parks and Rec plan for more detail. So, we will take another look to make sure that we clarify and do not give an impression that those needs or recognize that they are addressed appropriately in the parks plan. But generally speaking, the intent is for them to get that information from that report.
Questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for the time. Oh, I apologize, Mayor. One, just for information, we do have a community workshop tomorrow night. So we'll be taking the public through the 60-day review draft, so touching on a lot of the things we mentioned this evening. That's from 5:30 to 7:30. It's an open house. Residents are able to pop in any time between those hours and provide their feedback. So come one, come all, share with your neighbors. The 60-day review draft ends on March 22nd. So at that point, we'll make all final edits, address any comments from adjacent agencies. And then tentatively, it looks like we'll be taking this to the Planning and Zoning Commission in April, and then be back before you in May for hopefully final approval with that November 3rd general election. So just wanted to put that timeline up there for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
6:50 PM, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, ma'am. See you.
Apagaste la luz.